Hola community! Oh, how are you? How's it going? Pablo Vazquez here with another episode of Blender.Today live. We are gathered to see what's new in the node in 2.93. That is over. The developers are already working though in gathering the fixes for the 2.93.1, 0.2, 0.3, ever, because it's an LTS release. However, I think all focus is going to 3.0, and because of that, developers are also taking the time to optimize things. There are, like, I was going through the updates on this week for the 2 weeks that has passed, and it was like one, like, okay, speed up in this tool, and then in this other one, and this other one, and then it's just awesome. It's just awesome when performance gets priority. Let's go. I have 2 announcements to do today, and we should see them right away. The first one, I don't know if you've seen the code blog, but the developer of EEVEE just brought a it's not the clickbait, it's EEVEE's future. So what is gonna happen to EEVEE, and what can we expect from EEVEE? So we can expect a whole bunch of things because of a rewrite, an overhaul of the entire, like, architecture behind EEVEE. How does it work, and how is it split into passes? That's the biggest thing. Is the splitting into passes, because thanks to that, the next big thing, which I think it's gonna be as big as EEVEE, it's the viewport compositor. So the same goodies that you have in the viewport, but for compositing. Imagine that would be awesome. So for that, it needs to be, you need to rewrite a whole bunch of parts inside of EEVEE to work. I don't know, maybe light linking in the future, but screen space global illumination as well. This feature, I know we've been getting, at least I've been getting emails from the community asking me if I tried it, and yes, I tried it. It's awesome. It's but you can see that it's clearly a hack because of the limitations of currently EEVEE has. However, this rewrite could allow for screen space global illumination natively in EEVEE. That is super good news. Hardware ray tracing, another another feature that people are being asking, especially after seeing it's funny, every time, like, I don't know, the people from Epic release a new Unreal show feature, whatever, is like the next day, what is this in EEVEE? And yeah, that's what happened with ray tracing, in real-time ray tracing. So yeah, that's supposed to also come with this new rewrite eventually. Volumetric improvements on top of the ones that we just saw in 2.93, but even more. The shader execution model as well should be things a bit, it should allow for, it should be like faster in a way. We'll sample one, only paying the cost of a single evaluation, but sampling multiple, so it should be faster. And today there is this addition, because some comments in the community have been being a bit worried about, wait, what? Okay, so if EEVEE is getting super cool and ray tracing, hardware ray traced, and is it becoming more like cycles, and are we losing the NPR in it, or like the non-photorealistic rendering? And the answer is no. The answer is the shader to RGB is gonna stay just as is. It might look a little bit different depending in if you are combining NPR rendering with PVR rendering. They might look a bit different, but the node is not going anywhere. It's gonna stay, and we know that NPR is like super important in EEVEE and in Blender in general. So that's not going anywhere. So yeah. How's everybody in the chat? EEVEE to the moon. Yeah, like AMC. What does LTS release mean? Go to blender.org/LTS and you'll find out. It's a long-term support. So for 2 years, 2.93 is going to get updates, just like 2.83 is getting updates as well. Okay, the next announcement that I have to show, it's mainly to the Blender Cloud subscribers, that there is a new scripting for artists tutorial by Cibran. He made it so he made it it's more like a notes that he wanted to publish on his blog, but then they work also better as part of a tutorial for the cloud. And it's more about readability and understandability, so how to keep things nice and tidy. So super cool to have these kind of pointers from a developer so experienced. So you should check it out if it's on the cloud. It's not available for it's only available for subscribers, but it's worth the investment. Remember, the Blender Cloud is also what keeps Blender going. All right, I think we are good with the announcements. Remember, this is live. We are streaming live. It's 17 o'clock in Amsterdam, and it's Monday. Q&A. There is a thread already by Optimus. Thank you, Optimus. There is 5 questions already. If you don't, if you want to leave your questions, go to Blender.community and find the or Blender.Today, and it's gonna take you there. We've been working all weekend with Francesco on the new version. Last night we were like this close to like, shall we just launch the current website? And no, we're gonna do another week of passes, and maybe then do like a beta release for Blender community, and then release it to the open. So yeah, it's gonna have a beta release first because we need to iron all the small details. Okay, next. No, there's no next. There is just Blender updates. Let's start with let's not start with a bang and all the big features. Let's start with a small yet super useful improvement in cycles. This actually is a contribution by the community, by a developer from the community, which is super convenient. So I don't know you, but whenever I use cycles, because cycles supports rendering in like a border rendering. So here, there. So since cycle supports border rendering, like Control B and do this, I have it all the time on, like constantly, because that way when you render in cycles, that way you're only rendering the sides. So for example, if you have a color, see, you're only rendering this. If you don't enable the border render, then you have this. We are rendering all this space that is not getting used. So I always do that. You probably do it at home as well. And the optimization that here the developer has done, Kadaf, made it so if your camera passepartout, this thingy that you see here, the dark around it, so if you have the camera set to fully opaque passepartout, so you don't see through. So if you go to viewport display and then passepartout, if you have it all the way in 1, then your cycles is going to skip that. You don't need to have the border rendering anymore. You know, you can just disable it and it's going to be smart and rendering. Actually, you can see that when you tweak this value, it's okay, but then once you reach 1, it renders. It skips this area. Super cool. So yeah, it's a bit smarter. Nice. Okay, next. How I like that people are answering yourselves in the comments. Very nice. Yeah, when it cycles X becomes stable when it's ready. The developers are aiming at 3.1, but I would say whenever it's ready. Whenever they have it ready, no pressure. They're doing great. Actually, I have some updates on Cycles X. It's getting even faster. Like I thought Cycles X, like the first version we saw, is gonna be super fast, and then you add things back and it's gonna become slower. But actually they're managing to keep improving it and making faster. So super impressed on that. Okay, now let's switch into geometry nodes. Okay, let's start with a new node. We have a new node alert, but there's a node that actually removes things. It's a addition to remove. It's called delete geometry. and allows you to do that, basically remove the geometry in your mesh. So you can give it a mask or a selection. You can invert it as well, and it's just super straight to the point. Delete geometry. So thank you, Vazquez, for working on it. All those small nodes that are building blocks are super handy to have. Another node that you probably know and love from Blender in general is the shader RGB node. There's no picture, no anything, but I can show it to you. You've probably seen it a million times. This is probably one of the oldest nodes in Blender's history. It's the shader, I think it's in color. Yeah, RGB curves. Yeah, this guy. You probably know it. Now it's also available in geometry nodes. Another node, 3 nodes we had today, 3 new nodes. The other node is for curves, for working with curves, and it's called curve length node. So what it gives you is an output of the total length of all the curves as a float value. So you can use it in combination with other, like you have it as a float value, so you can plug that anywhere. It looks like here. There you go. So yeah, super straight to the point. This was actually implemented by Shawnee Matthews. So Guitar Geek, congrats on having a node in Blender. All right. Okay. The next improvement is related to curves. Since we're talking about curves, this one is interpolation. Now we can support interpolation between curve domains. So when you have, okay, so if you have from one curve domain to the other, you can actually see the results. It's gonna convert it automatically. You have splines and then you convert point to spline, basically. Interesting. This commit adds interpolation from the point domain to the spline domain, and the other way around. Before this, the spline domain attributes were basically useless, but now they're quite helpful as a way to use a shared value in a contiguous group of points. Super neat. You know what else? You can now draw curve data in the viewport. Yes. So this patch has a relatively small changes to the curve draw cache in order to draw the curve data in the viewport. So yeah, no more hacks in order to get the curves drawing in the viewport. So that's neat. And again, what is also neat is that the geometry delete node, the one I just talked about before, now also supports curve data. Okay, speaking of exposing, let's see. Okay, have you seen remember in the Blender.org features page? So I think if I go to new/new, yes, that's a shortcut that I made for myself, Blender.org/new, and it goes to the latest release notes. So I don't know if you've probably seen this page already. I did a show on Wednesday. Here, you know how crazy these modifiers are looking, because you can have objects, you can have the floats, you don't have drop downs yet. Eventually all the settings will be exposed, but now as of today, as of the last week, there is now the option to expose the texture and material inputs. Now in the there's no image. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So here, if I have a texture, for example, and I expose it in the node, now it shows up here in the modifier. And the same with material. So if I have material, for example, or input material, then no, not an input material, but a material input. So material assign, then you can expose that guy over here. And the one thing that you have to keep in mind is that at the moment, this list of materials is showing both grease pencil and non-grease pencil, like regular material. So keep in mind that it might, because grease pencil materials are still not supported. So yeah, that can be confusing. You're basically having grease pencil materials on a mesh object, which, yeah, confusing. Let's see. What else has been improved? Oh, and more polishing in the UI. This is the switch node. This switch node actually already shipped with Blender 2.93, allowing you to make better, like more flexible node setups, because it's basically you can switch between two settings and you can animate that, so it's even more flexible. But it was a bit difficult to read the defaults and the naming of the inputs. It wasn't very clear. Now they are hopefully more clear for everybody. The changes are that the default is set to geometry, which is something that people use more often, to switch between two geometries instead of I think it was float by default. Then the color up here changed because that was an oversight. It's now a converter. So if you have your setup and you're used to see it, I think it was green, now it's gonna be blue. And also the inputs are false and true, so I think it's easier because it's a boolean at the moment. It makes it easier to spot, to see. It's like, okay, it's false, go that, and then true. The way I remember, usually it's like if it doesn't do anything, if it's false, it's just gonna be the same as muting or bypassing. So I always try to remember that the first input is gonna be the one that matches. And I like how Blender, I don't know who made that, I think it was maybe Tom, but I like how when you mute something, it just like draws the line behind, so you can see, okay, this is what is actually happening here. Maybe color red is not great, it should be like dotted or something, or dashed, but I like that it's that feedback. Oh, Hans is saying that the switch node is in 3.0, not in 293. Wow, I'm already behind. Like, I'm already thinking, it's just 22 nodes. Collection is viewport attribute. Ah, it's true, yeah. Good point. Okay, the next improvement, actually, it's a performance improvement that it was done by the man here in the chat, Hans Goody. Skip recalculating normals in transform node. So by skipping the recalculation of the normals in transform, it's apparently like the have you seen the video of the kid saying apparently? In one of the test cases, it went up to 14 times faster. That's a lot faster. That contributes to the name of this video. Then, okay, so some things are faster, some things are not. This is a public service announcement that if you notice that the your node setups are slower currently in master in the development experimental version, it's because there is a bug that is causing multithreading to not work, basically. So it has been multithreading has been disabled for the time being until this is fixed. So yeah, if you notice slowdowns, it's because of this. As soon as it fixed, it's gonna be enabled again, so no worries. But yeah, just a public service announcement. Speaking of speed, you gain speed on one side and lose it on the other side. Okay, and the last addition to the geometry nodes is actually not related only to geometry nodes, but also cycles, EEVEE, open shading language, all over the board basically. It's a it's called multiply add. It's a new type of operation that you can do in the vector math nodes. So I think that it's all. That was thanks to Charlie Jolie. So yeah. Next, I think we're switching topics here. Let's talk about grease pencil. Since we talked a little bit before about grease pencil, there's a bunch of updates. One let's start with the small one. The moment you add a new grease pencil object or any object in Blender, you know, this menu, when you add any operator that has settings, it's gonna show here on the bottom left an option to a panel where you can tweak those the last operation that you did. In the case of line art objects, now there are a few more options. You can change the type, you can change the stroke depth order, and there's these 2 options. I think last time I talked about the in front, basically allowing you to place the objects just for the view in front of the other objects, so you can see the lines more clearly. And there is now an option for the use lights. It's off by default because I think grease pencil objects had it on by default, but for outlines it's better to just have it off. For lines it makes sense, so that's why that is the default for line art objects. Then a new operator, it's a new setting in the alt operator. When you bake grease pencil object transforms, now you can bake it into a new grease pencil object. So it's a common request apparently from animators to convert the transformation, including modifiers of one grease pencil object, into a new object, generating strokes. Strokes, like the band. Okay, a new setting in the layers relations panel. It's called disabled, but I think it should be called just inverted, but basically allows you to disable the masks in one view render, so they can be seen in the viewport, turn on, but you can toggle on and off for rendering. And I left them a note because the name of the setting was called disable masks in render, and it was a turn on, and I think it would be better if usually you should try to not have to enable a setting to disable something. It can be confusing. So already this is I'm Spanglishing. Folk already mentioned that it's renamed in master. Thank you. It's an older screenshot. Thank you. I missed the commit. I went through all the commits today and I missed the renaming. Sorry, otherwise I would have pointed out. The new operator in Grease Pencil allows you to normalize strokes, so it will revert back to the original thickness and opacity of the strokes, if just in case you want to like reset or undo. Okay, the last, speaking of optimization, I think every section today that I talk about has optimizations. I already mentioned the transform in geometry nodes, now 14 times faster in one test. Now this one in line art, it's around 39–40% faster, basically by just changing the way the triangles edges lists is stored. That's super neat. Up to 40% increase in performance overall for iterating among triangles in my test scenes. Performance improvement may vary among files and different CPU models, but hey, 40% faster. Wow, that's pretty neat. Wow. Then, you know what, now that you're not giving any more reasons for people to use 293, now everything is faster in 3.0. Okay, or maybe some of those changes can be backported, unless they are super dangerous to maybe they could be backported. Okay, speaking of libraries, it's not that I was speaking about them, but now there is a recursive resync. Now you can you know the option to resync a library override or a library in general. Right click resync in the outliner, and that it will like reload and make all the overrides again, basically like resetting everything from the original file. The option now works recursively, so anything inside any library override, any library inside that override is gonna be resynced. Awesome. Okay, time to switch into talk about the speed. No, not yet. User interface. Okay, this is the section, the user interface. Okay, let's start with an overlay. So, do you know, in when you're sculpting, like when you're sculpting, you have a usually if you want to optimize your scene, you would go and have multiple objects first, all separate, and then that way you're able to sculpt with more vertices. If you split your vertex count in multiple objects, it's gonna be better for performance. So in 2.93 there was a new operator to switch to transform between modes. So in 293 it was the D key that has changed, but the object the operator now is set to the tilde key. So this allows you to swap. And the new change that has been implemented is the overlay flash on mode transfer. So it can be hard to see without this setting, but now it's gonna flash in your face basically. So it sets the color of selection to the object, flashes for a moment, and then fades out. So it can be a bit distracting. That's why it's a setting, and that's why it's off by default. If you want to remove it, you're gonna go back to the slight difference in value of the objects. So yeah, it's a choice, I guess. I don't know if it should be a user setting, because if you really want to have that all the time, maybe it should be a user setting, because otherwise you have to enable every time. This is per viewport, so I don't know if it should be a per viewport setting, because I mean, what's the point of having it working in one? Well, maybe if you have one with like the final rendering, does it show in the render view? Yeah, it shows in render view, so maybe that's why. What do you guys think? Okay, next, the next improvement is the next change. The user interface is, I just mentioned it, that the D key for transfer mode has been moved to tilde key. There has to be a better key for that, but the main motivation for this change is that tilde key was being used for something that it's used way more often, which is the view, changing the views. This pie menu, the view pie menu, was set to tilde, and that can be confusing. It changes place in different keyboards. In a Spanish keyboard, for example, it's all the way next to the L on the right side, and yeah, even in English keyboards changes. So I think there should be a way that is being investigated to always have the position of the key for like the one next to above tab next to 1. It's a good candidate. However, in the 60% keyboards, those that are super tiny, that is usually mapped to escape. So yeah, it's not always available, so not the best. But I think having the view pie menu on the D key, mainly it's because it's on the left side of the keyboard. It's I think it works well. So yeah, you need to drag and like tap and drag, because D by default is the key used for the annotation. Do you guys use the annotations with D key? Like, is it like something that you use every day, every other day? Let me know. speaking of the transfer mode, now it's actually available on all modes. So if you're in edit, like if you have, oops, if I have an object and then I duplicate, so these are all different objects, right? And if I enter edit mode, now with the key I can switch between them. And this should also work in vertex paint, for example. If I press the key, it goes everywhere. That's another advantage of having it in the tilde key or some key that is not already used for other modes. So it works everywhere. So if you have, for example, if you're texture paint, now you can switch with which cube you want to have it pink. That is super nice. Then yeah, for everything, sculpt mode, I don't know why it was limited for sculpt mode only, but now it's available everywhere. For weight painting, this is awesome. You can just switch, click, click, and then weight paint over here, then weight paint over there. So less clicks for the win. Super handy. Before this, you have to like go into object mode, select the other object, and then go into weight paint. You want to go to another object, object mode, select, weight paint. No longer. Now, speaking of speed, now you just switch with the tilde key for the time being. If you have better keys that you want to propose, leave a comment below. Then what else? User interface. Oh, okay, in the video editing, in the editor, in the sequencer editor, now there the button to refresh is available. Should be available in all views. Now I cannot see it. Maybe I don't have a scene. But the operator for refresh all now works everywhere. It's the Control R, and it should be available everywhere. It should show like a report, because now I'm actually pressing the shortcut, but I don't see anything. It should report like refreshed. Then a new change in the video sequence editor. Now it's displaying the frames per second of the source video in the source panel. So in the same place where you can see the resolution, now it also shows the frames per second. This is also super nice. It wasn't there before, and that information is available since always. The camera presets, when doing motion tracking, they haven't been updated for 7 years. So yeah, not great. Do you know what is that? It's the name of the cameras that you can use to like to adjust the distortion. For example, there were many cameras missing, and some of them were really outdated. But yeah, there are new ones, full frame. Some of them have been renamed. So if you can't find it if you have custom ones, make sure you check. iPhone 4 isn't it a bit outdated? Aren't they like iPhone 12? Okay, now let's get to the good part. Let's speed this thing up, because this is the speed week anyway. Okay, cool. Let's start. I'm so happy that I can finally talk about this. People have been requesting updates in edit mesh since forever, like since 2.80, and before that, even then. I think 2.49 was the fastest you could have in edit mode, and then in 2.5, 6, and 7, I remember being a bit slower, and it's like, okay, after a while you get used to it. And then 2.8 came and it was slower again. So this is by no means already over. This is still work in progress, but there are substantial improvements in performance in edit mode. Let's see some of them. So edit mesh, partial updates for normal and face tessellation. What does it mean? Well, face normal and face tessellation. So when you update the normals, basically. So when you edit a mesh and the normals change, or face tessellation, when a face becomes tessellated, like converted into triangles. Okay, so there are the best overall speed up while transforming geometry is about 1.45 times. That's okay. However, an additional speed up, partial phase tessellation, is now multi-threaded, and that gives, depending on the number of cores of your computer, but in some cases here it's giving up to 15 times speed up. On my system here, Campbell mentions exact results depend on the number of CPUs. So the more CPUs, the faster it's gonna be. But yeah, I'll just let that sit for a bit. 15 times faster in phase tessellation. That's amazing. That is super, and that's not even the last. Just one of many. Okay, that was one update. Then here, draw manager, mesh extractor, showing the extractor, blah blah. Let's scroll to the numbers. Okay, so this patch replaces redoes the entire mesh extractor system. So part of the problem was like it was traversing the same loop in different threads. Yada yada yada. Let's go to the numbers. I know it. Let's go. This optimized the process around 34%. What process? The mesh extracting. So in this case, for example, when do you use that? Well, if you're editing a large mesh, something that used to take 50 milliseconds to update, or per frame 155, now it's 136. So if you had an FPS of 6.4, now it's 7.3, so you have more frames per second, faster editing. Okay, it's not impressive when you look at a small file, but if you look at the percentage, that should scale pretty linearly. More, undoing mesh editing now now is more memory efficient. Before it was making complete copies of each mesh were being restored, so it was using a lot of memory. Not anymore. Now it's time for Boolean updates, and this is another amount of commits that I saw, and I was like, oh, this is great, and then another one and another one. Let's go through them. First, Boolean. This patch from Eric Abrahamson uses parallel for is an update for the hole tolerant ray cast. In this case, on a 24 core computer, yeah, it's a monster of computer, I know, but it shows that depending on the amount of threads and how multi-threaded it goes. But look at these numbers. From 12, a boolean, speeding up a boolean part of an object from 12 seconds to 0.46 seconds. So 12 seconds to, how much percentage is that, people? That's a lot. I don't know. Half a second from 12 seconds. So happy. That's not even it. 24 times faster. Let's see. Not only that, so that is one speed up. Another patch, again from Eric, he found that in some functions, yada yada yada, on my machine, the example in that patch went from 9.5 seconds to 7.5 seconds, so 2 seconds faster. It's quite a while. Then on his machine, the running time went from 17 seconds to 10 seconds. So this is on top of the 24 times faster that we just saw before, 26 times faster. It's just amazing. 17 seconds to 10 seconds. Okay, and that's not even it. More. But wait, there is more. Okay, so here, in this commit, we don't have a reference time, how it was before. The developer, he just mentions that it's 11 seconds faster on a MacBook Pro even, which is not even like it's not even like a Threadripper. But yeah, that's seems to be faster, but it's 11 seconds faster of what? Of 12 seconds? Luckily, that is not even it. That is this other commit. This one goes from speed up by parallelizing a plane calculation. So again, Eric, you're on a roll. Thank you for like basically making booleans in 293 obsolete with these changes. So okay, here a test file with a boolean between two subdivided cubes around 6 million vertices gives 10% increase on my 6-core CPU. So not even like a wow. So it should this scale up the more threads you have? There's another optimization of the 3-if manifold, triangle if manifold, and this reduced the CPU time for find patches from 5 seconds to 2.2 seconds on the same test file. So I don't know if we should pile all this up, how much we have, but it must be quite significant. And that's not even it. There is one more commit that goes speeding up when there are many separate components. Use the bounding box to test quickly which components cannot have a containment relation between each other. This change got about 0.6 seconds on 25. Yeah, but how? 20, yeah, 6 seconds of what was the original one? So okay, it's faster. I don't know how much faster, but it's faster. So happy. You know, booleans affect many areas in Blender. It's just not the boolean modifier, it's also the boolean operator, or the booleans, I would say. Hans, if you're there, correct me if I'm wrong, but also in geometry nodes. So this code improves speed in geometry nodes as well, and also in sculpting. So if you do the trim for sculpting in sculpt mode, this should be faster thanks to these fixes. So yeah. All right, yes, the node, the boolean node here, Hans, developer of geometry nodes, it's confirming that this is faster. Okay, almost done. I'm almost done. Almost running out of time too. Okay, there. For all of you Linux people out there, I know there's a dozen of us Linux users. There have been a whole bunch of updates in Wayland support. I don't use Wayland on my computer, so I can't test, but I will be pretty happy if anybody using Linux here right now and using Wayland can can say if there is any improvements on that side. And is Blender already fully Wayland ready? Next, well, we talk about Linux. Let's talk about Windows. For all the Windows users out there, there is now apparently you know, you guys know the apparently kit, right? Because I keep saying this joke. You've seen this.
What did you think about
It was great. And apparently, I've never been on live television.
It says apparently a lot.
But apparently sometimes I don't.
Apparently, it's so cute. I wish I had the accent or any accent. Okay, next. Oh yeah, apparently apparently there was a flash when you were launching Blender on Windows with the console, so it would like flash and then run, and that was annoying some people. So now there is a new executable called Blender Launcher that will launch first. Like basically it would get rid of that flash. So it was fixed by making a new executable. So if you see a new file, Blender Launcher, that's what it does. Don't get any. Well, there's a broken heart. What happened? Why did you? Why is your heart broken? Because of a fix. Okay. Cool. The next improvement. Oh yeah, just mention actually that if you register Blender, so if you run Blender-R on Windows from the terminal to register Blender and all the blend files, and basically you make all the .blend files to open with that Blender version. Now it's gonna you have to do it to the Blender launcher if you want to not have that flash. If you like flashy, don't do it. Okay, and that is all. I have some Cycles X, but I'm running out of time. And just this last one, I think it's just fun to talk, to mention. If you do add-ons, or if you're a developer and you want to test make a script to use Blender and reproduce those operations, Campbell made a utility to generate interactive user actions. I bet this was made in order to test improvements in performance and to time them properly in edit mode. But yeah, it seems fun. It's a simulator of operators. So check this file, BL run operators event simulate. Looks fun. All the descriptions are here in the patch itself. I'm so running out of time. Let's see. Okay, 18 comments. I doubt I'm gonna cover all of them, but let's see. Let's start with the ones with the more votes up here. So, hi Pablo. Hi. Now that he has his own branch, we don't hear about Pablo.Today anymore before the news every week. Now nothing. Everything fine. Yeah, everything is fine. The Pablo is working. Pablo has a branch, so he's working there in maybe more risky features per se, and then merging them back into Blender when they are more mature. The Grease Pencil team also does that. Geometry Nodes also does that. So it's a common practice. Don't think that Pablo is not working on master anymore and now it's only on a branch. It's a more safe way of working without breaking master. Pedro Paulo Suzuki. It's a very cool name. How are you doing? I hope everything is going well for you. I'm doing great. Today I got an appointment for the 5G chip to get it in a couple of weeks. So yes, thank you, Netherlands. I have one question regarding Flatpaks. It's an open format for distributing and packaging applications on Linux, handling file deduplication and generating a secure sandbox that can be ported anywhere. Currently, the Flatpak version of Blender is made through a community effort. One of the main problems is that it doesn't generate statistics for the Blender annual report. Yeah, I don't know who's working on this actually, who is in charge of doing it. It takes a lot of time to get the new versions. LTS still not available, as Flatpak is used on most distros for being open and standard, and you guys already supporting Snap. How likely is that we can get an official Flatpak version of Blender? I'm not super familiar with it, but if someone is willing to maintain that, I don't know even how much work it is, but it could be added to the list. Basically, the Snap being supported in Blender is also partially because of the support by Canonical. So the same with Microsoft Store, for example, and a lot of people are using it, and I don't know if we even get there that it makes it to the annual report, but it would be great. The more the better. Flatpak, app image. I personally use app image. I use Flatpak as well because I'm on Pop OS. But yeah, it would be great to have it. This video by Elementary shows some advantages of the Flatpak format. I haven't tested it myself, but it would be great to have. The more the better. Johan, 2 questions, sorry. First, Winget. Microsoft just released the first stable version of the open source Windows Package Manager, and when I tried to update 2.93, I noticed it was not yet updated. That is maintained by community members. I don't even know what is Winget. But if it's so new that they just released the first stable version, could this be updated by Blender in the future just like Snap? I'm not sure. I have no idea, but if the community is willing to maintain it, yes. Remember that every new format that gets added to the mix, it adds overhead, and we are releasing pretty often now. And there is like this week, no, the week after, next week there will be a new LTS for 2.83, I believe, and the week after for 2.93 maybe. But yeah, Winget is like APT for Windows. Oh really, they're becoming modern. WSL. Microsoft also published the first preview of WSLG, an open source and official way to run Linux GUI apps inside of Windows 10 with GPU acceleration. I tested Blender and it's quite slow. As you guys work together with NVIDIA and AMD, will this performance be improved? But why? You are on Windows and you want to use Blender for Linux on Windows? I fail to see the what is a benefit. Or maybe I'm not understanding this, because I read about it, about this WSL, that it's great if you want to, like, I've been using Linux for all my life pretty much. So when I go to Windows and I don't have those Linux apps, it's great to be able to run those Linux apps. But if there is a native solution, I would probably use that. Maybe I'm missing something. Would love to run Blender in Linux as it's much faster. I have to use Windows for work and gaming. But I mean, how much faster would be to I don't know. It sounds like going one direction to go the other direction. Blender Bob says, hey, bonjour from Montreal. We are working on the most complex epic VFX shot ever made in Blender for a Hollywood blockbuster. We ran into showstopper issue with some Alembic files. I can't send a back report because of confidential information. Is there a way I could directly contact the developer who wrote the Alembic import add-on? You can, but there must be ways to report to, like, I think Blender, the best way for the industry to help back Blender, contribute back to Blender, is to be public about their usage. And of course, doesn't say that you have to publish an Alembic file with the transform in it, but if there is a cube that has that same problem, then that is the best way to do it. But it's, yes, like John said, hey, here Sibran is the developer that worked on the Alembic IO, so you could contact him, but it's better to do things in the open though. Sansuls, hey Pablo, hope you're having a great day. 4 things. Okay. It has a vote, so I'm gonna read it. First of all, just want to take a moment to say thanks for choosing Nodes as the future of Blender. This is an absolute game changer, and I've already seen industry professionals doing really advanced stuff and switching to Blender, and for that, congratulations. The future is way bigger than most people can imagine. The devs are clearly wizards. Now just polishing the features and making the features more stable and more robust, so artists can push Blender as much as they want with the new awesome tools. And if there is something Blender artists would love to have, one of them would be being able to get smooth playback with animation with lots of high poly meshes and simulations with lots of particles, and getting smooth playback and snappy view performance after the simulation has been cached. And I was watching an older MantaFlow tutorial in 2.79, and surprisingly the playback was super fast and real time and snappy compared to the current version of Blender. Well, in 2.7 it wasn't MantaFlow, it was a separate system, but also the default settings they were different. I think the defaults in MantaFlow are a bit more detailed, so if you change the defaults, it should be near real time for some simulations, not always, but yeah. I agree. I think no one ever in the world, not Blender developer, no one will say like, no, you know, I would rather have a slow Blender. I think you can see by all the updates in today's episode and Cycles X and the team of 3 developers working on improving the edit mesh performance, for example, that Blender Foundation is really putting effort in performance, in improving performance, and there is even in compositor updates as well coming all over the board. EEVEE as well, so there it's just not one switch to flip. One, yes, but it's ongoing. It's ongoing. If you come across the Samsung Virtual Assistant girl character that became viral on social media, yes, that whole thing was done in Blender. I mean, from modeling, sculpting, rigging, animation, rendering, everything. And the artist was Neru Rocha, and it was from a Brazilian studio called Light Farm. Yes, and Lucas also worked on it, right? Lucas Falcao? That's a viral moment for the community. Yes, the Samsung Virtual Assistant was made in Blender. Also, is there any... But you know, like, you know, Blender is also popular in the Rule 34 in the internets. So I think that's just by having the original also made in Blender, that makes it so much easier. The third question is also, is there any chance of adding the ability to put objects in a group and then being able to move and rotate the group? We already have collections, so the ability to be able to move, rotate, etc. without parenting. Yeah, this has been brought up a lot, and there are plans on how to tackle this. Basically, the idea is to be able to transform collections more easily, to be able to select a collection more easily. So if you click here, it should select all of them. If you click here, maybe it could show the like the same way you can select objects. You click here, it could show the collection, and then let you transform from there, basically. So the tools are there, it just needs to be improved. And I think it can be improved without adding a new type of grouping objects, as in groups. Collections are there, and I think it's better to improve collections, because collections are supported everywhere, in geometry nodes, in materials, in everywhere. So the more features that gets, the better. Otherwise, if you also have groups and collections that do similar things, then every time you add a new feature to affect collections, then people will also be like, hey, maybe it can also affect groups, and then you have to duplicate that. So yeah. Okay, and the last, a friendly reminder for the official annual Cycles and EEVEE Reels. There is no official annual Cycles and EEVEE Reels as far as I know. We just finished the 2.93 reel, and that was a lot of work for Francesco, but if the community wants to help out and do Cycles and EEVEE Reels, that would be awesome. Like a Blender reel in general, like an annual Blender reel, no feature focused, but just in general what was done in the last year. That would be super nice. And we already have the Blender Foundation list here made with Blender. So we used to have some reels, but the last one is from 2016, and this was all done by the community. So if you're out there and you know how to edit and get an epic music, please help. Okay, I'm way past time. Let's do 5 because I talked too much today. I'm going to the bottom because that is when the first, and that was the last question with votes, and then I'm going to the bottom to answer them because they were first. Okay, this is more like a texture paint issue. About texture paint, is it possible to avoid this distortion when painting in the viewport? What happens to UV maps when we... Well, this is projection painting, right? If you disable projection painting, that should go away. But it basically, it uses the... It projects from the view. I don't know what would be the... How would be the behavior without. So I think it's not even... Is it possible even to disable projection painting anymore? Back then it was a setting, but I don't remember anymore now if it's mask mapping. No? Maybe it's not even a setting anymore, but it used to be. What happens to UV maps when we manipulate geometry through geometry nodes? Are them processed, retained in some way? That's a very good question. Actually, the UV maps is not maintained. No, yeah, they are. They are. You can actually even see them in the. You can see them in the geometry nodes here. If you go to face corner, you have UV map. So it is preserved, and I've never tried this, but if I move here, yeah, there you go. You see, stored. And each UV map becomes a new entry there. So if I have UV maps and then I add a bunch more, see, they're all shown here. And what are the major features planned to enhance box modeling for the next release? Maybe the ability to access mesh data generated by modifiers. Will the bevel operator get some improvements? What kind of improvements? Because the bevel operator did get improvements before, but what exactly are you looking for in terms of improvements? Like, is any specific feature that it's missing? And in terms of box modeling, well, besides being much faster, I think it's too early to even, yeah, we're in Beacon 1, the very first stage of Blender 3.0, so I'm not sure if it's even gonna be, I think it should be more than just the edit mesh improvements. The next, way over time. Okay, please let it be short questions. Middle mouse click button on submenus for release the last chosen item. Ciao Pablo, what about this feature? Big workflow improvements. Thanks for the reply and thanks for all the developers I fell in love with. Please, some good souls help finish Carpish motion. Okay. We need various environments and assets, and then you leave your email. That's a really bad choice. Don't leave emails. We're getting a lot of spam lately. But yeah, for the feature request, right click select, and I think somebody asked for that before. What was the option? Middle mouse button on sub menus for repeats the last chosen item. So if you do middle mouse button here, it will do whatever I did before. How does it work? Or if I do middle mouse button here, it would repeat. For example, if I do viewport render image, then I do middle mouse button in view and it will execute that. The problem with middle mouse button here is that we use it for panning. That is one big issue. And then if you do it in the menu, I don't know. I'm not even sure how that feature works. Please explain the feature. Don't assume we know how it works in other softwares. Hi, love your stream. I'm going to be performing in the Boom Chicago Comedy Festival in Amsterdam in July. Is there anything Blender related in Amsterdam I can check out? Or is it just, well, there is a building, yes, just the front of the main office building. Well, there were meetups back then. I don't know nowadays, but there were people gathering. And yeah, I think July is just too early still for a tour of the Blender building. So for the time being, I think yes, only seeing it from the outside, waving out the window maybe. But yeah, you can always, when in doubt, you can always email Ton and then ask how's the situation. But I think July, it's too early. Okay, Ren. Hey Pablo, it seems the viewport look at 60 FPS for animation playback. Are there any plans to make it run higher? You can change the frames per second. Just remove that and it's just gonna be as fast as your screen can handle. Basically, yeah. How did you get the idea to add 2D animations and 2D shader? How did you get the idea? Well, 2D animations and 2D shader. Well, that, you mean Grease Pencil? Well, Grease Pencil has been around for a while, but the artist that pushed for it is Daniel Martinez Lara, Pepelant. Okay, way over time. I'm running out of voice already. So how about we cut here? How's the chat? Did I miss any important trolling in the chat? Mentioning emojis. Okay, some very nice comments. What setups are my computer? What do you use to record on Linux? OBS. Yes, I use OBS. Pablo, in which part of Argentina? ¿De qué Argentina sos? Patagonia. I'm from the Patagonic. I use Pop OS as Linux, and that is all. So what changed in Cycles X? Well, it's now faster basically. And you can preview the shadow catcher pass in the viewport. I can share a screenshot, but there's no really screenshot. It's more like just the commit. And also, oh yeah, and that ambient occlusion and bevel shaders now work. So restore shader ray tracing for ambient occlusion and bevel nodes. So yeah, kind of a big deal if you're using those. Okay, time to wrap up. I hope you like today's episode. It was a bit all over the place. A bit of the updates. They were from 2 weeks ago because last week we had Blender release. I was gonna say Cycles X. Too early for that, Pablo. Too early. But because we had the LTS release last week, and that was a bit crazy. But I think it went fine. People have been downloading it, breaking records again. People are using a lot more the Steam and Windows Store, so that is also good, except for people on Steam using Windows 7. There was an issue, like the update was just done, and the people using Windows 7, Blender will update automatically for them, and so they would basically not being able to run Blender anymore. It was just open and crash. Yeah, that is an oversight. There should be a way to prevent people from updating. If you're using Steam, you can right click on the Blender version and then go to properties, betas, and then change the version that you are using. So you can go back to 2.92 and prevent that, so you can still use Blender. And there are reasons to update, really. It's just Python 3.9 only supports Windows 8.1 and higher, so yeah, it doesn't support Windows 7 anymore. And Python is a big part of Blender. It's needed. Apparently there is a DLL file that you can add to Blender to make it run. Apparently that is making it work, so that's good news. But I don't know how is that gonna work with future updates. So yeah, Windows 7, Microsoft stopped supporting Windows 7 in early 2020, like January 2020. Yeah, sometimes things just get outdated, and it's a bit sad when you see people commenting saying like, oh, how much money did Microsoft pay you to stop supporting Windows 7? And it's like, dude, I'm telling you to upgrade to Linux. I'm not telling you to upgrade to Windows 10. I'm saying you should switch to Linux. How would even think that? However, there's a lot of support going on for Blender 2.93. It's amazing when releases like this can make people happy, such as 3.0. Check how Blender 3.0 is running on your system. Is it really faster? Is Boolean as fast as it seems? I want to see numbers. Okay. See you, let's say, next week around the same time, same place, for another episode of Blender Today. Yes. Without warning nowadays. We just make it. How's that? Bill Gates pocketed Pablo. Yeah, right. I'm telling you to switch to Linux. Come on, we're like 12 people using it, and it's faster and more safe. Ciao. See you next week. Bye.